For nearly 2 decades, the pro wrestling world has been drawn towards the lightning rod of controversy named CM Punk. From his amazing Summer of Punk storyline in Ring of Honor to his backstage battles with the Elite over in AEW, it's not uncommon to hear Punk's name constantly mentioned within fan circles. And now, with him returning to WWE after being gone for over 9 years, CM Punk's future within the company has fans buzzing with anticipation. But before we talk about his future, we must look at CM Punk's past. More specifically, let's take a look back at his first go-around in WWE, the place where he became a household name, the place where he helped revolutionize the business, and the place where he finds himself today following years of bitterness between himself and that company. But more on those issues later. I'm Greece from Wrestleology, and today let us see how the WWE career of CM Punk came to be as the Chicago Saint forced himself into becoming a worldwide phenomenon. Before we begin, I want to point out again that this video is specifically covering Punk's career in WWE. We won't be talking about what went down recently in AEW or his run at all, to be honest, as we've already covered Punk's time in that promotion extensively on this channel. But if you did want to hear my thoughts on the matter, as well as what went down between him and the Elite, then I recommend you check out this video right here. Also drop a like, it helps a lot. But anyway, with that caveat out of the way, let us rewind the clocks back to 2006. WWE had recently relaunched ECW as a third brand, with Paul Heyman back in charge of his Violent Baby, and after following his career in WWE's developmental show OVW, Heyman knew that he could build a future name in CM Punk as a top superstar for his brand. Of course, the skinny, tattooed Chicago native would have a hard road ahead in the land of the Giants, but with his great in-ring skills and his next level talent on the mic, it was clear to Heyman that Punk could be a top guy in WWE. So, after a backstage promo introducing the new straight-edge superstar, Punk made his debut in August, defeating Just Incredible with the Anaconda Vice. From there, he would linger on ECW for the next year, picking off guys like Mike Knox and Elijah Burke as he slowly rose through the card, while fans grew more and more intrigued. Sure, he may have not had very many memorable feuds during this time, but Punk's talents as a performer pushed him into the hearts of those watching. He was even the most over superstar on his team at Survivor Series, despite teaming up with the legendary fan favorites like Shawn Michaels and Triple H. And with him quickly becoming one of the most beloved stars in ECW, he was positioned in several high-profile matches during his first year, such as being in the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 23. However, after seemingly capturing the illustrious briefcase, he would unfortunately be knocked down by Mr. Kennedy that year, who quickly climbed the ladder to win instead. But while Punk may not have walked out with the briefcase, he would soon find a way into the world title scene in ECW. After helping Tommy Dreamer and the Sandman dispatch of the New Breed at One Night Stand, the ECW champion Bobby Lashley would be drafted over to Raw before being stripped of the gold. So, a tournament was held leading into Vengeance of 2007 to crown a new champion. There, the final of the tournament was set, with CM Punk and Chris Benoit scheduled to battle over the belt. However, Benoit would miss the event due to that one thing that we all think of when we think of Chris Benoit, so he was replaced at the last minute by John Morrison, or at the time, Johnny Nitro, and Johnny defeated Punk on this occasion before defeating him again at both the Great American Bash and SummerSlam. But in what was said to be his final shot at the gold on the September 4th episode of ECW, Punk was actually able to pick up the win to finally gain the ECW championship. After just a little over a year in the company, Punk had won his first title, to the excitement of the crowd as he looked to lead the brand for the foreseeable future. And as champion, he chose to defend the title against more of the younger names on the roster, such as The Miz and Elijah Burke. Eventually, he would also find himself embroiled in a feud with Chavo Guerrero, looking to defeat the veteran. However, the only issue was that if Punk wanted to defeat Chavo, he would also have to deal with Chavo's allies in the Major Brothers and the World Heavyweight Champion, Edge. The numbers game would sadly be too much for Punk, as Edge helped Chavo steal the title away in January 2008, and Chavo would then retain the championship at No Way Out, ending the feud and walking into WrestleMania 24 with some gold around his waist. However, despite this loss, CM Punk still had something to look forward to walking into WrestleMania season. Like the previous year, Punk entered the Money in the Bank ladder match looking for a chance at redemption, and after a chaotic match, the Orlando fans were stunned to see Punk climb the ladder and actually retrieve the briefcase. For many, this was an exciting moment for the company, which seemingly looked to be pushing this guy who, according to WWE's history, just didn't have the look of a world champion. But a few months later, a new World Heavyweight Champion was crowned on the June 30th episode of Raw after Punk cashed in the briefcase. Interestingly enough, the man who he beat for the title was none other than Edge, the same guy who helped Chavo steal his ECW championship. But despite this exciting development, Punk's first reign with the World Heavyweight title was pretty lackluster to say the least. Apart from a few defenses against Batista and JBL, Punk could just never get the WWE machine behind him, a pattern that continued throughout his run. Hell, he didn't even really lose the title. So you see, at Unforgiven, a championship scramble match was made for the belt, with Punk being written out of the match earlier in the night by an attacking Randy Orton and the rest of Legacy. And when Punk came back a week later to confront the new world champion Chris Jericho, he was met with a steel cage to the face and a loss as he quickly dropped down the card. But while this loss may have been frustrating for both Punk and his fans, he would soon find himself with gold wrapped around his waist again. After making an ally in the increasingly popular Kofi Kingston at the time, the two would seek to destroy Legacy through their own separate frustrations with the group. So on Raw, they challenged Legacy members Ted DiBiase Jr., who I just recently made a video on, check it out, and Cody Rhodes for their World Tag Team titles, picking up the win to the shock and delight of the fans after an explosive GTS. However, being a World Tag Team champion just wasn't enough for CM Punk following his fall from the heavyweight title scene. So while remaining as champion, Punk would enter a number one contenders tournament where the winner would receive a shot at William Regal's Intercontinental Championship. But while Punk did end up in the finals of the tournament against Rey Mysterio at Armageddon, on the house show the night before the pay-per-view, Punk and Kofi lost their tag team gold to The Miz and John Morrison. Yeah, walking into a number one contenders match, the pressure was completely on Punk here, but he somehow managed to catch Rey from out of midair to hit the GTS and picking up the victory. And with this win, Punk went on to challenge Regal for the Intercontinental Championship multiple times, unable to capture the gold due to multiple disqualification losses. Because of this, a no disqualification match on Raw was made between the two, which Punk won, kicking off his reign with the IC title. Yep, within only a few years, CM Punk has won the ECW title, World Heavyweight title, Tag Team titles, Money in the Bank, and was now Intercontinental Champion. It's crazy to think, upon hindsight, just how much Punk was given during the early stages of his career. Sure, perhaps those runs were forgettable due to the poor booking choices of WWE, especially with how his World Heavyweight Championship run ended, but it seems like WWE around this time saw that Punk had something valuable to offer. It's easy to look back at this time as disappointing for many fans, but it does feel like WWE realized that Punk's talents should be recognized, even if they didn't fully know how to capitalize on it. But with Punk now heading into WrestleMania 25, the future seemed bright for him, as 2009 would be a pretty big shift for his career in the WWE. However, you wouldn't expect it following his loss to JBL on the March 9th episode of Raw, where he actually dropped his IC title after just 49 days. But he still had WrestleMania ahead of him, and after entering the Money in the Bank ladder match, he would embark on a journey to win the ladder match for the second year in a row. And to the surprise of many, he actually did it, climbing the ladder and retrieving the briefcase as the first person to win Money in the Bank more than once, and to this day is the only person to ever win it in back-to-back years. With this huge burst of momentum, Punk was drafted over to SmackDown, where he would set his sights on the World Heavyweight Championship once again. However, his plans were interrupted by the Samoan monster Umaga, who targeted Punk with several attacks. And after Punk's loss to him at Judgment Day, a rematch was set between the two at the following month's Extreme Rules pay-per-view. This time, however, an extra layer of spice was added when it was revealed that it would be a Samoan strap match. But despite all the odds seemingly weighing in Umaga's favor, it would be CM Punk who left with the victory in what would sadly end up being Umaga's final match before his passing. But that wouldn't be Punk's only victory that night either. You see, following a hellacious ladder match between lifelong rivals Edge and Jeff Hardy, Hardy would celebrate in victory as he won the World Heavyweight Championship. But with a new champion hurt from that very match, Punk saw a golden opportunity to run down, cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase, picking up the victory over an exhausted Hardy. Yeah, for the second year in a row, CM Punk was World Heavyweight Champion. However, this cash-in would be the beginning of a slow turn towards the dark side for Punk, as he faced off against this new beloved hero of the people. Jeff would get a rematch against Punk at the following month's pay-per-view, The Bash, which ended in a disqualification after Punk kicked the referee. This, along with a false finish earlier in the match, led to a furious Jeff Hardy to attack Punk after the bell. Punk claimed to have suffered an eye injury in the match, giving an excuse for his kick to the ref, but Jeff wouldn't believe it. And Punk responded to this by verbally attacking Jeff due to his past substance abuse issues, claiming that Punk has to take prescribed medicine for his eye injury while Jeff chooses to take less favorable and illegal substances. These excuses only made Punk even more of a bad guy, with the feud between both men proving more and more exciting as the weeks followed. Punk, the straight-edge douchebag, versus Jeff Hardy, the beloved hero who woke up every day ready to battle both Punk as well as his own internal demons. This feud would end up being, in my opinion, the most interesting in WWE around this time, with Jeff and Punk even main eventing Night of Champions over a triple threat WWE title match between Triple H, John Cena, and Randy Orton. There, Jeff would pick up the victory to take home the World Heavyweight Championship. This loss only angered the now former champion, however, who attacked Punk in the weeks that followed, and this all led to a TLC match at SummerSlam between Punk and Jeff. Again, their match would end up main eventing the show over the WWE Championship match between Randy Orton and John Cena, the two handpicked megastars of the company. There, Punk was able to recapture the gold to become a 3-time World Heavyweight Champion, but as Punk stood over Jeff's prone body, the lights would suddenly go out and a chill would be sent down his spine. When the lights came up, the body of Jeff Hardy was replaced by The Undertaker before he attacked the new champion, closing the show with fans excited to see how Punk would fare against the dead man. But before we get to that, Punk still had to conclude his feud with Jeff, who was still furious following his loss at SummerSlam. So, on SmackDown, the two men would put their intense rivalry to bed in a massive way. A steel cage match for the world title was made, where the winner would walk away with the gold, and the loser would be forced to leave WWE. And to the disappointment of those in attendance, CM Punk would be the one to walk out that cage as champion, forcing Hardy to leave the company. Yes, for a long time, this looked like the end of Jeff's time in WWE, up until his shocking return alongside his brother nearly a decade later. However, with Punk now becoming one of the most hated men in the entire company, he would continue to fight through the anger of the fans to try and remain on top of SmackDown. Heading into the following pay-per-view Breaking Point, the fans looked for the legendary Undertaker as the man to avenge Jeff Hardy, but Punk was still able to hold on to the gold after yet another recreation of the Montreal Screwjob, where the referee called for the bell during Punk's Anaconda Vice submission hold, despite Taker not tapping out. However, the fury of the dead man could not be contained, especially when he feels cheated out of the richest prize on SmackDown, so he continued to go after Punk heading into the following Hell in a Cell event. He even targeted general manager Teddy Long, famously kidnapping Teddy in his own limousine. And following this, Teddy returned in fear as he made an official rematch, with Punk now set to defend his belt against Taker inside the Hell in a Cell structure. And with no way of escaping, Punk was forced to go face to face with the Phenom before ultimately losing his championship following the Tombstone Piledriver. This loss, alongside future losses to The Undertaker, pushed Punk out of the championship picture. But with a new added edge to his character as a top heel on SmackDown, Punk was able to finally do a bit more character work without the constraints of WWE's typical babyface booking. So he decided to amplify his straight edge traits during promos, bashing people more and more for their choosing to partake in drugs and alcohol, really doubling down on this complex that because he's straight edge, he's better than everyone else. He started acting more like a leader, trying to save people of their addictions, such as the case with Luke Gallows. Previously known to WWE as Festus, Punk used his influence and position in the company to help cure Festus of his storyline mental illness caused by substances, transforming him into a powerhouse monster working underneath CM Punk. Yep, this was the beginning of the Straight Edge Society, a cult created by Punk that pursued a healthy lifestyle over booze and drugs, and like in many cults, Punk would start to shave the heads of those looking to pledge their allegiance to the society. Week by week, Punk gained more disciples from the WWE universe as he took fans from the audience and shaved their heads in the middle of the ring. One of those fans was actually Serena, a woman who began following Punk to each city they went to as a permanent member of the faction. Punk Punk's new character continued to preach on, even having a stint in that year's Royal Rumble match that saw him take over the match with a series of sermons asking those in attendance to join his cause. During the Elimination Chamber match for the World Heavyweight Championship, Punk was eliminated by Rey Mysterio, kicking off a feud between the two heading into WrestleMania 26. Punk saw Rey as a golden opportunity for the society, believing that if he could somehow get Rey to join the group, then maybe all of those fans who worshipped Rey would start to worship Punk as well. Punk challenged Rey to a match at WrestleMania with the added stipulation that if Rey lost, then he would join Punk. And in order to get under Rey's skin before the match, Punk infamously interrupted a birthday celebration for Rey's daughter Aaliyah by creepily singing to her and tormenting the entire Mysterio family. Rey was able to get revenge for this at Mania, however, by defeating Punk, and they had a rematch at Extreme Rules with a new added stipulation. Punk would have to shave his own head if he lost. If he lost that match, copying his disciples that had to go bald for a man who still had his greasy long black hair. However, this time, Punk was able to get the best of Rey following an interference from Joey Mercury, the newest member of the Straight Edge Society. So finally, a match was made combining both stipulations at that year's Over the Limit pay-per-view, Punk's hair versus Rey's freedom. And there, Rey was able to pick up another victory over the Straight Edge Savior, who was forced to shave his head bald following the match. In his humility, Punk began to wear a mask to hide his freshly shaven head, but unfortunately, after this loss to Rey, the Straight Edge Society would start to fall apart underneath Punk. After failing to recapture the World Heavyweight Championship at Fatal 4-Way, Punk would begin a feud with the Big Show, which saw the Giant overcome the group at every turn. Not only did he humiliate Punk by unmasking him on an episode of the July 16th, 2010 episode of SmackDown, but he was also able to defeat the Straight Edge Society at SummerSlam in a 3-on-1 handicap match. This loss only drove a wedge between Punk and the rest of the group, which wasn't helped by Punk's loss to Big Show at the following month's Night of Champions event as well. So this, as well as the unfortunate injury of Joey Mercury and the release of Serena from WWE, caused the group to disband, with Punk now once again left to fight on his own. However, Punk did get the chance to hit the reset button a few weeks later after learning that he was being drafted back over to Raw. However, Punk would be pulled from competition after sustaining a hip injury, but to continue working through the injury, he began commentating for Raw to the delight of many. Hand CM Punk a microphone and he'll just make magic with it. So to give him for hours each week was a real treat for those watching, but this didn't last too long as he left the commentary team toward the end of the year after assaulting John Cena. You see, following the collapse of the Straight Edge Society, Punk realized that he needed a new group of superstars to surround him as he climbed back up the card. So it was revealed that the motives for these attacks on Cena were for Punk to establish his power in his new position as the leader of the Nexus, and renaming the group to the New Nexus, Punk decided to have a strict style in running the group. He made each member of the group prove themselves worthy of a spot in brutal fashions, such as asking Justin Gabriel and Heath Slater to hit each other with kendo sticks in order to prove their devotion towards the group. In January, Punk and his new Nexus targeted Randy Orton, costing him the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble. Punk in this feud wanted revenge for Orton prematurely ending his first world title reign in 2008 alongside the rest of Legacy. Orton responded by taking out all the new Nexus members with vicious punts to the head, leaving Punk as the final member of the group heading into WrestleMania 27, and there Orton would pick up the victory before finally putting an end to his feud with Punk at Extreme Rules in a last man standing match. Following this, Punk would enter into the WWE Championship hunt after winning a number one contenders triple threat match on Raw. This victory would mark the beginning of Punk's biggest storyline to date, as following the match, he announced that his contract with WWE would end at Money in the Bank, the venue that his WWE Championship match with John Cena was set to take place. He vowed to leave the company that night with the gold, all in front of his friends and family in Chicago, and in the build-up to this match, Punk used his unique positioning to cut a scathing promo on the company, knowing that he had a guaranteed main event match leading into the show. At the top of the ramp on June 27th, as Cena laid out in the middle of the ring, Punk described his frustrations in what has now been dubbed the pipe bomb promo. He criticized WWE's corporate hierarchy, bashing the McMahon family as a whole while referencing other wrestling promotions. This promo lit a fire under the company and Punk specifically, as he described how many fans felt at the time. Sure, it's commonplace for this type of behavior now, with WWE constantly mentioning other promotions these days, but this stuff was so taboo for WWE at the time. Punk was pushing truth over WWE's narrative, seemingly standing up for us as an audience against the machine, and in the weeks that followed, Punk continued to fight against the machine, becoming an anti-hero who, while looking to leave the company, still stood up as the voice of those who felt powerless in a quest for change. And at Money in the Bank, with Punk's pipe bomb turning him into a white-hot star overnight, Punk walked into his match with Cena as Chicago's hero. The two, through the once-in-a-generation excitement of the crowd, put on easily the best match of the year by putting everything they had into the bout. And despite Vince McMahon himself coming down to help Cena retain, Punk was able to steal the victory and run through the crowd as champion, kissing both Vince McMahon and the rest of the company goodbye. In his absence, WWE was left without a WWE champion, as Punk held the richest prize in sports entertainment while being away from the promotion. So, a tournament was held for the vacant title, which saw Rey Mysterio finally win the WWE Championship for the first time in his career, only for Cena to swoop in and recapture the title that very same night on Raw. In the span of just 2 weeks, we were back to the status quo, with John Cena closing out Raw as WWE champion so soon after Money in the Bank. However, as Cena celebrated his win, a new song started blaring throughout the arena, and a few moments later, that Cult of Personality soundtrack was revealed as the new theme song for the returning CM Punk, as he sported his own WWE championship around his waist. And from there, a match was made for SummerSlam between Cena and Punk, with Punk being able to pick up the victory to become the undisputed WWE champion. However, things took a bit of a weird turn for Punk following this match. As Punk celebrated with the gold, a returning Kevin Nash would make his way through the crowd to attack the champion. Hitting him with a jackknife powerbomb, Nash stood over Punk before Alberto Del Rio ran down to the ring to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase, becoming the new champion to close out the show. And this result caused a lot of confusion over the next few months, with Nash explaining that the only reason he attacked Punk was due to a text message that he received by Triple H, telling him to attack the straight edge superstar. Triple H, now acting as the COO of the WWE, continued to deny these allegations, causing tension between him and Nash. Punk, the constant rebel that he is, harassed Triple H, not believing him in his denial of being involved in the attack. So a match between Punk and Triple H was made for Night of Champions, which Punk actually lost. However, with Punk still aching to earn back the gold, with the whole new WWE Championship picture still in scrambles following SummerSlam, a triple threat Hell in a Cell match took place over the title between Punk, Cena, and Del Rio, which Del Rio actually won to retain the title. Around this time, Punk had also begun targeting the Executive Vice President of Talent Relations, John Laurinaitis, after naming him specifically in his pipe bomb promo. The two traded verbal jabs over the months, with Laurinaitis acting as the perfect corporate yes man to Punk's rebellious actions. He even became Raw general manager around this time, causing more of a headache for Punk as Laurinaitis continued to punish Punk with his authority. Eventually though, Punk was able to get his one-on-one match for the WWE Championship at Survivor Series after forcing Alberto Del Rio to accept this challenge by locking him in the Anaconda Vice until he pretty much said yes. There, Punk defeated Del Rio to recapture the championship and begin his biggest title run of his entire career. From there, Punk successfully defended his title against Del Rio and The Miz at TLC the following month, all to the disapproval of Laurinaitis. The feud between Punk and Laurinaitis continued through the medium of Dolph Ziggler as the Royal Rumble loomed ahead. A match was made between Punk and Ziggler for the show, with the angry Laurinaitis acting as the outside enforcer, looking to screw Punk out of the championship. However, Punk was able to retain despite the odds. Punk would unfortunately come face to face with a new challenger after this in the form of Chris Jericho. After returning in the build-up to the Royal Rumble, Jericho Jericho attacked Punk on Raw, and he then explained that he felt like Punk was just a cheap imitation of him, with both men calling themselves the best in the world on TV. Both men met each other inside the Elimination Chamber structure, with Punk retaining his championship despite the dangerous stipulation. Jericho, meanwhile, continued to target Punk heading into WrestleMania 28, becoming more and more despicable throughout the build. To get under the skin of the champion, Jericho brought up Punk's real-life familial issues, calling out his father's alcoholism and his sister's drug addiction on Raw. Jericho then threatened Punk's own personal values as a straight-edge wrestler, saying that their match at WrestleMania will push Punk into taking these substances that he's sworn away from. However, Punk was able to use his rage against Jericho during their match, successfully defending the title at WrestleMania before finally defeating Jericho for good in a Chicago street fight match at Extreme Rules, putting an end to this personal rivalry. And after this, Punk would begin feuding with Daniel Bryan, heading into Over the Limit after Bryan became #1 contender on Raw. As a part of their feud, Bryan framed Punk for attacking Kane with a steel chair, pushing the Big Red Machine into the feud. However, the next few weeks, things became increasingly more complicated. After Punk successfully defended his title against Bryan at Over the Limit, Bryan's former girlfriend in AJ Lee would insert herself into the feud, looking to anger Bryan. Lee romantically pursued both Punk and Kane over the weeks heading into No Way Out, with the deranged diva constantly throwing a monkey wrench into Bryan's championship plans. Either way, Punk was able to retain the gold against both Kane and Bryan at No Way Out after Kane accidentally collided with AJ, allowing Punk the chance to hit the GTS and win the match. And the feud finally came to an end at Money in the Bank, where Bryan and Punk met in a no disqualification match. Leading into the show, AJ Lee was made the special guest referee after turning her back on both Punk and Bryan for not giving her the attention she felt she deserved. There, Punk once again retained, following a superplex through a table in the ring. After John Cena won the Money in the Bank briefcase that same night to close out the show, Cena approached Punk with a challenge. For the 1000th episode of Raw, Cena wanted to renew his rivalry with Punk as he announced that he will be cashing in his briefcase for the belt. There, Punk was forced to defend against Cena in the main event, only for the match to fall apart after Big Show ran down to cost Cena the title. However, after the match, The Rock ran down to the ring to save Cena from the assault by Big Show, only for him to be blindsided by Punk. Fans watched as Punk turned heel again that night on The Great One, with one of the most beloved wrestlers in the world turning his back on the fans by attacking the Hollywood megastar. Punk justified his actions the following week by saying that he was tired of people like Cena and Rock overshadowing him due to their star power despite him holding the biggest prize in the company. Punk's bitterness towards always playing second to WWE's Golden Geese pushed him further down a dark path, demanding everyone to respect him as champion. He successfully defended the title at SummerSlam against both Big Show and John Cena, and in the following weeks, Punk continued to target legends like Jerry Lawler and Bret Hart as he demanded their respect, with Cena saving the legends from Punk's disrespectful treatment of them. During a Falls Count Anywhere match, Cena was attacked by Punk backstage, who helped Del Rio pick up the victory, and Punk then picked up the destroyed body of his adversary, bouncing his head off a car before revealing that his newest manager is none other than Paul Heyman. Yep, the guy who helped bring him into the company was now standing behind him as Punk stood on top of the world. At Night of Champions, Punk kept a hold of the gold during his one-on-one bout with Cena, with Punk looking ahead to see who his next challenger will be at Hell in a Cell. Punk started to feud with more variety of legends, including the WWE chairman Vince McMahon. He even slapped Vince, the most powerful man in pro wrestling, right in the face on Raw, which led to a match between them that night. However, as Punk continued to attack the elderly Vince, the monstrous Ryback would run down to the ring to save him. The crowd were thunderous as Ryback looked to destroy the champion, only for Punk to narrowly escape into the crowd. This then led to a match between the two at Hell in a Cell, with Ryback walking in undefeated with nearly 40 victories under his belt. And with the match taking place within the Cell structure, it seemed like Punk's reign would not survive past this match. However, an unexpected twist took place when the referee for the match, Brad Maddox, hit Ryback with a low blow, helping Punk to retain the championship and end the undefeated streak of Ryback. I talked more about the Brad Maddox side of things in a whole video about Brad Maddox, so you should definitely check that out here. But following this victory, Maddox would reveal that his assistance had nothing to do with Punk specifically, but more with his own self-interest of becoming a WWE superstar and ditching his white and black shirt. And while Ryback would quickly get his revenge in a match against Brad on Raw, Punk's title reign would soon be put back into jeopardy as Vince McMahon did everything he could to take the title away from the corrupted champion. A triple threat match was made for Survivor Series, with Punk defending his title against Cena and Ryback, the two men who most wanted to see Punk's reign finally come to an end. However, in another exciting twist, Punk was able to walk out with the gold after a debuting new faction showed up to his aid. Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins all debuted that night to help Punk retain the gold, with the Shield immediately proving to be a dangerous trio in the company. Back at Raw 1000, the show that saw Punk's heel turn on The Rock, an announcement was made for the 2013 Royal Rumble event. After his victory over John Cena at WrestleMania 28, The Rock declared that he would challenge whoever held the WWE Championship walking into Royal Rumble to a match for the gold. So The Rock returned around this time to make good on that promise, as he stood face to face with the guy who attacked him all those months earlier. And to make things even more complicated for Punk, a stipulation was put in place that Punk would be stripped of the championship if the Shield interfered in their match. During the bout, the lights suddenly went out as an attack could be heard in the darkness, and when they came back up, The Rock's broken body was laid out through the announce table. But when Vince McMahon came to strip Punk of the title, as The Rock had clearly just been attacked by the Shield, The Rock instead requested that the match be responded. And when he finally re-entered the ring, the match was back on, with Punk immediately scrambling to keep the belt. However, after hitting one last people's elbow, The Rock would pick up the win to be crowned WWE Champion, ending Punk's reign at 434 days, the longest world title reign in the modern era, before it was broken years later. And this loss drove Punk into their rematch at Elimination Chamber a few weeks later, which Punk lost following a miscommunication with Paul Heyman. Punk, desperate to recapture the gold heading into WrestleMania, challenged John Cena to a match on Raw over his guaranteed position as #1 contender following John Cena's win in the Royal Rumble match. But despite putting on arguably the best in the rivalry, their match ultimately concluded with Cena beating Punk, officially taking him out of the title picture. But now that he had lost the WWE Championship, Punk was forced to find a new path towards WrestleMania, so he instead decided to target something perhaps just as precious as the WWE Championship itself: Undertaker's WrestleMania undefeated streak. After defeating Big Show, Randy Orton, and Sheamus to earn the right to face Taker at WrestleMania, the feud became extremely intense following the real-life death of Undertaker's former manager, Paul Bearer. In this feud, Punk uncomfortably disrespected Bearer, looking to get into the mind of Taker. He even stole Paul's infamous urn that he held during his time with Taker, taunting him with it heading into Mania before emptying the ashes all over a prone Undertaker on Raw. Things got very personal, with their match stealing the show at WrestleMania 29 and being my favorite match of the night. But despite all the mind games, Punk was unable to defeat the Dead Man and break the streak, and he suffered yet another loss. So after this, and following a 2-month hiatus away from WWE, Punk would return to defeat Chris Jericho after weeks of back and forth between Jericho and Punk's manager, Paul Heyman. Upon his return, Punk was back to being a good guy, as he told Heyman to no longer accompany him to ringside as he looked to re-enter the world champion picture. And after Punk stepped up to a newly minted World Heavyweight Champion, Alberto Del Rio, on Raw, a match was made between them later on that evening, which resulted in a countout victory for Punk. However, following the match, the terrifying beat of Brock Lesnar's music hit as he entered the ring to stare down the former WWE Champion. And after a few moments of tension, Brock laid out Punk with an F5 as the two Paul Heyman guys kicked off a new feud. Speaking of, this attack would only cause even more friction between Punk and Heyman. Heyman said that he had nothing to do with the attack before the two embraced in the ring, as Punk's face during the hug revealed that he might not fully trust his advocate. Either way, Punk decided to put his anger with Brock to one side as he entered the Money in the Bank ladder match. But during the match, Heyman would end up running in and costing Punk the match and his chance to win the briefcase for the third time. The man who helped bring Punk into WWE turned his back on him, siding with his other clients like Curtis Axel and Brock Lesnar over the guy who, as soon as he came back to WWE, started to distance himself from him. Punk's anger towards Heyman became the backbone of his career for the next few months. At SummerSlam, the Best in the World took on the Beast Incarnate in a dream match situation. However, despite the no DQ stipulation, Punk was unable to fight off the Beast following an interference from Heyman. However, Punk wouldn't be done until he could finally get his revenge on Heyman, so he targeted both Paul and his client Curtis Axel heading into Night of Champions. A no disqualification elimination handicap match was made, with Punk finally looking to get his hands on Heyman during the match, only for another twist in the story to take place as Ryback ran down to the ring to slam Punk through a table. Ryback followed this up by placing Paul's body on top of Punk's, officially aligning with Heyman as his newest powerhouse monster to take over Brock's role now that he was absent from WWE after SummerSlam. A match was made between Punk and Ryback at Battleground, which Punk won following a desperate low blow on the big man, and this ultimately concluded in one final showdown between Punk and Heyman at Hell in a Cell. There, a 2-on-1 handicap match was set to take place within the Cell structure, where Heyman and Ryback joined forces to take on Punk. Once again, Punk was able to survive the insurmountable odds before chasing Paul up the Cell to perform one last GTS up on top of the cage. So with Paul now in his rearview mirror, Punk began to ally with a fellow anti-authority superstar in Daniel Bryan. The two Ring of Honor legends joined forces to take on the Wyatt family. However, after a tag victory at Survivor Series for Punk and Bryan, Bryan would be taken by the Wyatt family, and when trying to save his friend, Punk was attacked by the Shield, who have now aligned themselves with Triple H and the rest of the Authority. This pushed Punk's focus towards the Shield as he began a feud with the group that he himself pretty much brought into the company. He also targeted the Authority in his pursuit for taking apart the Shield, believing they were the ones who had him attacked by the group. At TLC, Punk won a 3-on-1 handicap match against the Shield after Roman accidentally speared Ambrose, and Punk's feud with the Authority transitioned into a feud with Kane, another member of the group, as Punk entered the 2014 Royal Rumble. There, Punk was attacked by Kane and eliminated him over the top rope before chokeslamming him through the announce table. Following this, it was actually reported that CM Punk had walked out of the company. Unexpectedly, and in the middle of a feud with the biggest heel group in the company, Punk's frustrations with WWE had finally broken him. Mentally and physically, Punk was spent, and he just couldn't deal with being in this company 1 second more. Eventually, Punk was actually sent over firing papers on the day that he got married to fellow WWE superstar AJ Lee. This and a whole lot more was all revealed during a rather famous appearance on the Colt Cabana Art of Wrestling podcast. There, he went through all of his anger in detail, angry at not being treated as a top star despite being a multiple-time WWE champion. Punk felt like he was constantly held back in WWE and that the entire system needed to be completely rebuilt. Coming out of the podcast, Punk had completely rocked the pro wrestling world all over again. When Vince himself was asked by Stone Cold during his podcast about the situation, Vince responded with regret and apologized about the entire situation. Punk chose to not believe Vince's apology, continuing to bash the company and claim that he will never return to wrestling. But you can never say never in this business, and after multiple acting gigs, comic book publishes, and a few UFC losses, Punk walked back into the wacky world of pro wrestling in 2019. Hell, he even returned under the WWE umbrella as he appeared on the Fox talk show WWE Backstage, where a group of wrestling minds talk about everything going down in the company. However, the show was soon canceled, and Punk quickly left the company again after just getting a taste of WWE. And perhaps that little taste was all Punk needed for him, as following the successful launch of AEW, Punk made his official return to the ring on August 21st, 2021. There, he put on some excellent matches, tremendous promos, and even won the AEW World Championship twice. But as you are probably aware, his time in the company only seemingly helped tarnish his reputation. Backstage fights and toxic behavior led to Tony Khan firing Punk, with this decision proving to be a smart move in the months since. A decision that I don't know if Tony Khan actually might currently regret. And with Punk leaving AEW, WWE saw an opportunity to help make a ton of money while also hoping to mend fences with one of the most anti-WWE wrestlers in the world. So at Survivor Series 2023, following the main event War Games clash between Raw's biggest main event players, the Chicago crowd came unglued as for the first time in over 9 years, they watched CM Punk return to WWE. Yeah, in a move that many thought impossible, Punk walked back out into WWE. Quick side note, I don't know if you guys care, but I was actually on the verge of tears when this happened. This is literally my favorite wrestler of all time. But yeah, the same company that he had bashed for nearly a decade, the same company that destroyed him mentally and physically, is the same company he walked back into. And only time will tell what comes from his return. So far, it seems as though Punk has been enjoying himself under Triple H's new regime, but we'll just have to wait and see what he makes of all this. Me personally, I'm looking forward to the Seth Rollins feud. Will he be a bitter man we saw in AEW, or will he be rejuvenated by the power of sports entertainment? CM Punk has become one of the biggest pro wrestling stars in WWE history. Love him or hate him, and you'd be justified in either feeling you may have, you can't deny that he's proven to be a terrific wrestler. In his absence, his name was still chanted in arenas all over the world, and his skills as a performer have buried him into the hearts and minds of millions. Sure, he was never positioned as the man like your John Cena's or Steve Austin's, but you get the sense when looking back at his career, the WWE really did try to make him work. Sure, perhaps they didn't always use him in the best ways, and there was some weird booking decisions, but Punk was consistently used, was consistently stealing the show, and was constantly handed opportunities by the company due to his skill set being impossible to ignore. And with Punk now walking back into WWE in 2023, it seems like WWE is handing him everything they can to utilize him the best that they can. Upon his return, Punk has been pushed as another top star in their already stacked lineup, showing up on Raw, SmackDown, and even NXT to try to expose their programming. The voice of the voiceless is back, and no matter what you may think of him as a person, it's hard to deny that WWE didn't just receive a huge adrenaline boost with the return of... Thank you so much for watching, and drop a like and subscribe if you enjoyed.